This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. Often out of control anti-Israel protests are taking place now on college campuses across this nation. And now law enforcement are suddenly being called in, finally being called in. Who are behind these protests, and also where are we headed? Well, joining us now to talk about all of this is Lieutenant Steve Rogers. He's a retired military officer. He's also was a lieutenant with the Nutley, New Jersey Police Department, and also assigned to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. Steve Rogers, great to have you here.
Well, it's my pleasure, Rita. Thank you.
How dangerous are these protests that we're seeing now, it seems like everywhere across the country, especially on college campuses?
Dangerous to the degree that our national security is now at risk. I'd like to put a few things in perspective, Rita. To begin with, I no longer call these individuals protesters. I call them terrorists. They're terrorizing people on the campuses. They're terrorizing people in the cities. They're terrorizing even the police on the scene who are unable to take control of the situation because of the rules of engagement. But the fact of the matter is that no one is going to lead me to believe, by the way, that this just happened overnight. These are months and months and perhaps years of radicalization on these campuses by professors, by college presidents who have enabled these individuals to organize the way they are. And by the way, the hands of the White House, Joe Biden is on this too, and the Democrats in this country. By the way that they're condemning Israel and demanding that Israel pretty much surrender to Hamas, this is emboldening these individuals, terrorists, that are creating havoc here across the United States.
You talked about President Joe Biden. Are you surprised that so far he's only made very sort of tepid comments condemning it? He said, just recently, I support free speech, but these are violent, some of them. We can't have violent protests. But he doesn't say what is he going to do. It seems very docile. And I think it has created, just as you said, this climate where many of these students and others, these outside agitators, feel they can get away with it.
Well, his actions don't surprise me because he's been consistent on condemning our allies and emboldening our enemies. But I've got to tell you what surprises me. The fact of the matter that our Congress, which we Republicans control, hasn't stepped up earlier and passed some pretty rigid laws that would enable the police to arrest these individuals and charge them under anti-terrorism statutes. That's what it is. It's terrorism. Local mayors like Eric Adams, really, what has he done? Look how long it had taken him to finally say, you know what, the police should move in. Now, of course, Rita, the mayor of the city of New York and other blue state mayors are saying, well, a crime's got to be committed or someone's got to get hurt before we move in. Well, how about assaults, Mr. Mayor? How about illegal seizure of these buildings? How about terrorist threats against people? These aren't crimes. Bias crimes, hate crimes. So you know what, Rita, what we have in this country is a woke agenda. We have, actually starting at the White House, running deep blue through all of these cities and states that are run by Democrats, and they have enabled and they have emboldened these terrorists to do exactly what they're going to do and what they are doing. And by the way, this is the beginning, not the end.
Yeah, you say it's the beginning. Where do you think we are headed?
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back during the Vietnam War, and there were thousands of protesters across the country. I remember the college campuses, which unfortunately ended up with 6 students killed in Kent State. But you know what I'm looking out for now, Rita, what we saw in the 60s and 70s? Remember the term hard hats? the contractors, the construction workers left their sites and clashed with these student protesters. Why? Because the police were unable to handle it. Bikers got into the action. And finally, it was so out of control, the National Guard had to be brought in. We're headed in the same direction. And what did they say in history? If you don't learn from history, history's bound to repeat itself. It's going to repeat itself if these governors, if these city mayors don't get a handle on this. This is no longer a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. It's an American problem. It's a national security problem. And we better get together and solve this problem before it becomes so overwhelming. I don't know what direction we're going to go in.
You noticed also as you talk about sort of the difference in ways that different cities handle it. It's interesting to see in some places, like you look at like UCLA, for example, in Los Angeles. It went on and on and on. And I mean, the media was watching. It was being televised and it looked like two big brawls. I mean, it was getting very violent. Finally, the police step in, and they were saying they were waiting for the mayor to say, can we come in? You wonder if the mayor privately was saying, don't come in at first, and then finally realized. But it seemed like it went on so long. And then there are other cities where almost immediately, like in some of the schools in Texas, for example, when they started protesting, Steve, the police came in on horseback, and suddenly things looked like they were pretty quickly quashed. Is there a big difference in leadership with some of the blue states and some of the other states, and how, I guess, concerning is it when you just let things sort of fester like we saw at Columbia?
Well, you're right. Texas, South Dakota, Florida, let's go on. Red states immediately took action. You learn in police work that you go immediately after the leaders of these terrorist activities or protests and violent rallies. You go after them immediately, you make the arrest, and you begin to shut down what's going on before it gets to a point where buildings are seized and people are hurt. So there is a clear distinction between Democrat-controlled cities and colleges and states and Republican-controlled, because the Republican-controlled conservative agenda is based on protecting the people of this country. The Democrats have let things get out of control, and now we're all paying a heavy price.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
How much is, speaking of price, how much money do you think is influencing these protests? And where do you believe most of the money and the funding is? Because we see all these different protests. They seem, these are students, and they're going around with these very fancy schmancy tents. It's very organized. They have pre-produced signs. They seem very organized. And in a lot of cases, we've seen these outside agitators and sometimes well-known folks who are well-known sort of protesters. At one case, I think it was in Columbia, they found the wife wife of Samuel Arian, who was a known terrorist, and it's the wife was helping the students. I mean, there's a lot of outside influence also stirring the pot.
Oh, no doubt about it. I believe millions is being poured into this, and this is why the FBI has to get involved rather quickly to follow the money. Find out where the money's coming from. Are there any foreign influences, any foreign countries involved? And Rita, keep in mind, over the past couple of years, haven't we warned the American people and our government about the southern border? Well, maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, some of these terrorists came into this country and had this plan for quite some time. They knew somewhere along the line that there would be trouble in the Mideast because of Joe Biden actually emboldening our enemies by condemning Israel. And it all points to the fact that Israel is defending itself. They're fighting for their lives, for goodness sakes. And Joe Biden, instead of standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel, he's saying, well, Israel, why don't you compromise? Why don't you not fight this the way you're fighting it? Well, could you picture after 9/11 any country telling us not to do what we did to Iraq? So the fact of the matter is, as we defended our country with massive military strikes, Israel's doing the same thing, and they should do it until they feel comfortable, not Joe Biden, until they feel comfortable that they're safe.
What do you make of the fact that the Biden administration, you talked about border and who's crossing our border. And again, like you said, Steve, we have no idea often who is. It's not checked. There are so many. We have as many as, 10 million under this president. And now we're hearing that the Biden administration is seriously considering welcoming Palestinians from war-torn Gaza to bring them in as refugees. If you look at even some of the latest polls, it shows that 72% of the Palestinians said they supported Hamas. That was after October 7th. So, why would you ever bring these people in right now when you can't even vet the ones we have?
Votes, Rita, votes. They're giving these people a temporary citizenship. They're giving them money. They're giving them cell phones. They're giving them homes. They're giving them everything. And believe me, I've heard in some cases that these individuals are having the right to vote in some of our elections. So it's a massive, as far as I'm concerned, it's a massive power struggle for the Democrats to stay in office, because the way things are going now, there is no way that Joe Biden's going to be reelected. There is no way that the Congress and the Senate should be turned over to the Democrats. They see the writing on the wall. But think about this. You got millions of these people crossing the border. They're giving all sorts of benefits. Well, guess who they're going to vote for if they are, in fact, given the right to vote? And in some cases, I understand they have been.
It's amazing, too. Like, there have been efforts in New York City, for example, to have them vote in local elections, quote, non-citizens. It's been contested, so it's not in place. But it seems like there's a back and forth fight, like you said, where they are trying to get these individuals. And it comes at a time, of course, where the economy's crazy and we're worried about national security. One of the things also, too, Steve Rogers, was, I don't know if you saw this, you talked also sort of about Iran and the impact here. How much do you think Iran is having behind some of these protests? They're clearly loving seeing the division in America. And in fact, there was even a report that they have said, if these students who get kicked out of schools there, they can come to Iran for free. I'm thinking maybe that's a good thing if they go to Iran. First, they get out of the country, because many of them don't seem to love America, some of these protesters. And the other is, let's see if they come back crying to come back to America when they really realize what it's like to have no rights and no freedom of speech. Can you imagine if they said what they're saying on American campuses over in Iran?
Oh, they would be tortured, and if not executed, sent off to some camp. You're absolutely right, Rita. But Iran's fingerprints are all over this. Look at, the irony of all this. Iran is not financing this, in my view. The United States is. Why? And how can I say that? How dare you, Lieutenant, say that? Well, I'll tell you how I can say it. Billions of dollars from Obama, billions from Biden. Remember the pallets with all the money? That's our money. All right, so it went to Iran, and Iran is using that money to finance the unrest here. So the fact of the matter is that Iran, that has been the terrorist state that everybody hates, even the Arabs hate, they're still getting away with what they're getting away with, because good old Uncle Sam decides, well, let's dip into our treasury, let's give Iran a few $1 billion, and maybe that'll quiet them down. No, not at all. In my view, it's just causing more and more and more fuel to the fire. And that fire is not burning Iran up. certainly they want to burn Israel up, but they also want to burn us up.
You know, it's heartbreaking when you see the division in this country that's happening right now. And as we're watching, you do believe it's going to get worse, sadly. Why do you believe that? And also, I think a lot of people do, because we're heading into the summer months. It's an election year. Emotions are high. And also, given the developments that are continuing. In fact, Netanyahu just said recently that he is planning to still go into Rafah. If he goes into Rafah, we may see now even more protesters use it, either, with their genuine sentiments against it or just as a reason to protest.
Well, I'm going to touch upon a topic that very few people want to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it because it's something we got to be concerned about, especially in the United States. To begin with, we have a responsibility, I think all of us, and you've been very responsible. You're part of the crowd of trying to, bring civility. Let's lower the temperature. Let's get the facts out there. But people need to understand violence is not the answer. The voting booth is. But my concern is that, we have 300 plus million people in this country, and maybe 90% are armed. 90% have weapons. And boy, what I hear and see that's going on across this country from people that want to take the law into their own hands, and they want to fight for this country, but that's not the way to do it. I worry about a civil war, a revolutionary war. Call what you want it, but it's a place we shouldn't go. And to the point about maybe what some of our leaders should be doing, maybe they should stop the fighting with each other across the aisle or fighting with each other in the same parties, but they need to stand up and lower the temperature. Guys, lower the temperature, because we're headed towards a very dangerous part of American history that none of us want to see. So I think, Rita, our responsibility at this hour, at this time in American history, is to tell people, you want to fight, go to the polls. That's where it counts. You don't even have to go out and rally. I mean, rallies are fine, exercise your First Amendment, but it counts when you go vote. And then throw people out of office that have not served the best interest of our national security. That's how we solve the problems, not by armed conflict.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Get out there, speak up and vote for people who you think will change things, and do it peacefully, and get your friends out to vote too. Get everybody out, because boy, is it a time where so much is on the line. I don't know if I see that, though, sadly, Steve. I mean, I agree with you, and I hope you and I, our messaging is positive and does have an impact that way, because I tell everybody, go to the voting booth. But I worry because it has become so divided. And even to the point of going back to President Biden, where you see he is obviously afraid to go after even some of the extremists in his party that had a problem condemning anti-Semitism, going after hate crimes, it seemed. It seems like he's afraid because I tell everybody it's a two-state solution for him. It's Michigan and Minnesota. And maybe Wisconsin, too. Maybe it's a three-state solution as opposed to what's really happening in the Middle East. It's all about the votes. And next few months could be a long few months in this country.
Well, it could be. And to the issue of Biden, and I'm sure you agree with me, if he has mental issues, he has some problems with thinking and making decisions. And certainly I wish no ill on anybody. But he doesn't belong in that office right now. I blame his wife, okay? I don't like to pick on people, but she should be a great influence to say, look, it's time, Joe, time to go. So the question then remains is who's running the country? Who's really making the decisions if he doesn't fully understand what's going on? And I think we're going to find out real soon. I don't know if he's going to be healthy enough to run a campaign in this next election. I have no idea what's going on in the Democrat Party, other than they're probably panicking now because Donald Trump is going to win this election. The question is, where do we go from here? But in the meantime, as you said earlier, and I said it also, we need to help lower the temperature, get to the polls, don't go and take the law into your own hands. Pretty frightening what we're seeing out there happen. But we're smart. It's a good country. We love our country. We're the best in the world. The whole world is watching how we're handling this. We're a constitutional republic, and we need to handle it within the framework of that Constitution. But, Rita, it's got to begin in Congress. It's got to begin in the United States Congress and then go trickle down to every local elected official to stand up, speak out, but do it in a way that you're showing the people you're leading them not to more dangerous times, but to better times.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a happy note, I want to end with sort of leading on the positive note. At the University of North Carolina, there was a group of students, I don't know if you heard about this, in the middle of all the protests. And of course, in a lot of places, we have seen them defacing, flags, destroying statues, draping statues and replacing American flags with Palestinian flags and other flags. And at the University of North Carolina, Steve, there was a group of frat brothers that actually stood around where the American flag was. And they said, protesters, you are not going to touch our American flag. They defended the American flag. The protests, quelled down there. And now I love this. Apparently they set up, or somebody set up, I think for them, a GoFundMe page. And it's raised tons of money because people around the country are saying, bravo to these young guys. And they want them to now have a party. So I guess in the middle of all this, there are people, even young people, in the middle of, college campuses who are saying, no, I love this country. I want to appreciate it. I want to respect it. And I want other people to do the same. Does that give you hope that the youth of America is not lost?
Yeah. Yes. And in addition to that, there is a spiritual element to this. To hear people say they're praying for our country, they're praying for our leaders, they're praying for peace. We should never give up on what our founding fathers wanted us to do, is really base our country on some biblical principles that are there for us to seek divine providence, to seek God Almighty, and to say, Lord, help us in these trying times. And you know what? He will help us as he has in the past. That's why we say, God bless America.
Do you believe our best days are still ahead if we can overcome some of the bumps that look like they're on the near horizon?
No doubt about it. We're Americans. We've gone through some very difficult times before, maybe not as tough as this, but because of our strong will to stand together as Americans, our strong will to keep in mind there's a God above and that we're still in tune with him, still communicating with him. He's still communicating with us. God shed his grace on thee, right, Rita? Well, he has, and he will never give up.
Absolutely. What a beautiful, perfect way to end it. And everybody, be sure to subscribe and share this really important podcast. Wow. Lieutenant Steve Rogers, you're terrific, my friend, and so great to get your perspective. So great also just to hear your insights and your experience. And I love that you ended on faith and also hope at the very end of this, because, boy, we could use a lot more of that right now. I think so many people across this country and across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for your good work. God bless you.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.